Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. Welcome to episode 23 of the 13th season of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Brown, and this is the weekly podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalogue, song by song, album by album, and includes conversations with musicians, fans, and people connected with Tom along the way. Today's episode is a part of my conversation series. Today's episode is a part of my artist conversation series and is a wonderful chat I had with the songwriter for and lead singer of Have Gun Will Travel. For those of you who were down in Gainesville, for those of you who were down in Gainesville for the Tom Petty weekend, you probably saw Matt and the guys play their killer set on Sunday afternoon. And I bumped into Matt later that evening and asked him if he'd be cool with me reaching out to invite him onto the podcast to talk. So this is that conversation. This one ranges all over the map. We do discuss Tom Petty's influence on Matt's songwriting, but we also talk about his band's fantastic new Voyager Golden EP, which I have coming on 10-inch vinyl in the new year, which I'm very much looking forward to. We also head into all sorts of interesting side roads leading to Ennio Morricone, David's Bowie and Gilmour, Mark Knopfler, Carl Sagan, and even Ernest Shackleton. On the way, we poke our heads into Close Encounters of the Third Kind and talk about sibling harmony within Have Gun Will Travel. Matt's obviously a great student of music, and he was fantastic to spend some time with. And I know you're going to find our chat diverting and interesting. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with the wonderful Matt Burke.
Tom Petty. Tom Petty Project. Tom Petty. Hey, Tom Petty Project.
Well, I saw you you guys for the first time in Gainesville at
Yeah,
the Tom Petty weekend, and
yeah.
as a music fan and as a someone who's been to a lot of shows, the first thing that struck me was, man, these guys are tight.
Oh,
Like you guys were
nice.
so good you can tell like a really good band playing good rock and roll.
Oh,
It's a
good.
joy. It's a joy for all of us to watch, right? So
Oh,
maybe we'll
great.
start there. Maybe I'll flip the script
Okay.
straight away. How did the
Yeah.
Tom Petty weekend happen? How did you get that gig and tell me all about how that came
Okay.
about?
So, we have, as a band, Have Gun Will Travel. We've been doing Tom Petty kind of birthday related type shows. I mean, for years. It started in kind of our Tampa Bay area. Um, just kind of that area that we've got a community radio station in Tampa called WMNF. It's 88.5, and they put on shows, different events and stuff like that. They have, and every year they do a Tom Petty birthday thing where it's not as big and, as kind of like structured as the one in Gainesville is.
Right.
But they have bands come up, and the radio station promotes it and stuff like that. And they have artists only do like 15 minutes, so everybody does like 3 to 4 songs,
Yeah.
whatever you can fit into 15 minutes, and it's more of kind of a fundraiser for the station. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So it's like, and so we were doing those. Sometimes I would do it solo. Sometimes I would do it with like occasionally we play as a trio. My brother Danny is the bass player for our band, and then Scott, our guitar player, he plays lap steel. So sometimes we do it as kind of a three-piece, and we do kind of like the folkier kind of Tom Petty songs and that kind of thing. So we were doing that for years. And then there was another one in Gainesville that was going for a while. A friend of ours, Jason Hedges, he and his wife put on a really, really good event. And it was Tom Petty Birthday Bash, I think is what they had called it. And these two, they weren't really rivaling kind of festivals, but they were just going on kind of simultaneously at the same time. So there'd be the one, you know, um, at the Heartwood Soundstage, and then there would be this other one that was in the big field right across the
Right.
street from there. You know what I mean? And they'd be going on like the same weekend, and it was just, wild. So we were doing that one. We were friends with Jason Hedges and his wife, who put it together. So we were doing that one, and we had never been to Heartwood before. We'd, talked about it a bunch of times. We had kind of even interacted, with their they're booking people, and
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it just not, we never settled on a date. And our drummer Sam, he plays in another band called Someday Honey,
Oh, okay.
um, and they were originally scheduled to play this last one, and something happened. Their singer Kaylee, she's awesome. She had some other thing that she had to do, and she wasn't able to do it. So Sam talked to the people at Heartwood, and they were like, "Well, if Havgun is available, you guys can jump in there." And that's how we got on it.
Wow. So
Yeah,
a last minute replacement.
it was. Yeah, yeah,
That's crazy. You're talking about too there. One thing I found that was my first time I've been down there, and you think about, you've played a million gigs, right? So doing sound check and getting good sound on stage, that's a half the job is making sure you sound good. The
yeah,
fact
yeah.
that they were able to do that more or less on the fly
On the
and
fly,
get
pretty
everyone
much. Yeah,
sounding as good as they were. I mean, they were obviously the little
yeah,
bits and pieces here and there, but it was
yeah,
remarkable.
yeah.
I went to spoke to the sound guys after and said, guys,
They
that was
were
incredible.
they were great. They were totally pro. They nailed it. As soon as we were up there, they kind of had it. They had us dialed in minutes, and it was very impressive. And it went very smooth.
Yeah.
from one artist to another. Transitions were very smooth.
Want some great acts out there too that I've discovered, including you guys. How do you then, when you go into a festival like that and it's
Hmm.
a bunch of Tom Petty fans and it's the diehards, how
Yeah,
do you then decide? How do you construct your set list to think, okay, well, we have to play our own stuff because we're a band and we're an originals band.
yeah, yeah.
And we've got to bear in mind, well, probably someone's going to play Free Fall or probably someone's going to play Mary
Right, right,
Jane.
right,
How
right.
do you go through that process?
Yeah, that's kind of, we have we have like a handful of kind of petty tunes that we just have ready at any given time.
Right.
And they're not necessarily the hits, you know what I mean? So some of our favorite tunes or some of the ones that we just have kind of dialed up that we could be ready to go with are songs like You're So Bad,
Yeah.
off Full Moon Fever, or, um, Time to Move On from Wildflowers. You know what I mean? Like they're not the radio hits.
Yeah.
So most times if we kind of stick with those and then throw in another one that we kind of have that we kind of work up leading up to the event or whatever, we're pretty safe because it's not likely that the band ahead of us or behind us is going to be
Right.
doing one of those deeper cuts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, again, as fans, that's kind of what you want too, right? I mean,
Yeah,
look, I
yeah.
love Free Fall and I love Won't Back Down,
Of course.
but I've heard them enough times now that if someone
Yeah,
does
yeah.
You're So Bad or someone does, I think Robin and Shakedown, they did Cool Dry Place by the Wilburys, right? It's like, oh,
Oh
that's awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Because you
yeah.
don't hear those songs live, right? You just
Right,
don't see them
exactly.
live. So
Totally,
that's the
totally.
joy.
Well, so it's that, and then it's like how much, what percentage of originals do we want to do, and what percentage of covers do we want to do?
Yeah.
For an event like that, you know, the staff there, the people that we were dealing with as far as the booking, or they were just like as much petty as you can handle.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and we're just like, okay, well, we'll do like, you know, we'll make it like 75-25. We'll do like 75 originals,
Yeah.
25%, petty. And that's kind of how we, put it together.
But it's good though, right? Because your music it's not the same as the Heartbreakers. There's different flavors that you guys have in what you're
Yeah,
doing,
yeah.
but it's close enough that
But
a
yeah,
rock and
for
roll
sure.
crowd is going to be okay with it, right?
That's how I feel about it. I mean, as a band, I feel like one of our, influences is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So I feel like our style of music, the kind of style of rock that we play and the songs that we write aren't too far outside of,
Yeah.
those kinds of songs.
Well, let's talk about that then a little bit. So let's talk about influences and growing up. Obviously, you're a Florida boy, and
Yeah,
Petty
yeah.
then becomes sort of that. He's like, you're in Jersey, well, Springsteen's your guy, really, if you're
Oh,
into rock
yeah.
and roll, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
what was music like in the Burke household growing up? What were you and your brother? What were you guys exposed to as kids? And did you have a musical family?
Yeah, for sure. But it was kind of a weird setup. We were early on. Um, the family was very kind of church going and very religious. My dad, he was a musician, a songwriter, played guitar, piano, bass, um, and he had a band when I was a little toddler. He had a band that was kind of a, you know, Christian, I guess you would call them, almost kind of alternative band because they weren't doing like conventional kind of Christmas music. I mean, sorry, Christian music. They were doing like they had some rock and roll influences and
Right.
jazz, and they were kind of doing a more kind of contemporary thing. And it kind of rubbed some people the wrong way in the church. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be playing electric guitar and doing
Yeah.
uh, church music and that kind of thing. So there was that going on. So we definitely had a lot of religious music that was played when we were young. But my parents were also into, a lot of their own thing, kind of late 70s, Doobie Brothers, Steely Dan, stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of that in the household. And so we were and then there was, the radio, there was top 40 radio. So, I mean, and me and my brother, we were, you know, kids in the like mid to late 80s
Yeah.
when top 40 radio was pretty cool. Like there was pretty
Yeah.
good music on the radio at the time, and MTV, and so I mean it was just kind of a mixture of all these of all these things. And then we got a little bit older. Our parents got divorced at a certain period. My dad ended up playing he played bass for, we have a community theater, players theater,
Hmm.
um, here in Bradenton. And it was, when we were growing up, it was called the Manatee Players. And he played bass in all the musicals that they would do. And so my brother and I would get to go to all these, these little kind of hometown community
Yeah.
theater musicals, you know what I mean? And I mean, to this day, I have a great, you know, kind of like a place in my heart for show tunes and for, you know what I mean? For that
Yeah,
kind of
man.
music, for those kinds of songs. And there's a real art to writing those kinds of songs and the melody and, um, and then simultaneously at that same time, my brother and I started skateboarding and hanging out with kids in the neighborhood that started getting us into punk rock. So like
Okay.
we were we were going like, it was like punk rock and show tunes. You know what I mean? Like there's a very, very wild kind of combination of influences to be kind of growing up with. But um, you know, the Petty thing was always there just because he was such a presence on the radio in
Yeah.
those days. You know what I mean? And especially when Full Moon Fever came out, it was huge. And so there was always that, but I never realized how big a fan of Tom Petty I was until a little later in life when I kind of started focusing more on songwriting and came
Right.
back around to look at him through that lens. You know what I mean? To look at those
Yeah.
songs through that lens. And that was much later. I mean, that was, my brother and I, we had different punk bands, we had kind of indie rock bands that we were playing in all through teenage years and like into the 20s and stuff like that. And it really wasn't until we had a band called the Chase Theory prior to Have Gun Will Travel, and that was like for a decade we did that. We toured, we put records out on indie labels, and kind of did the whole thing. Um, and at that time, we're listening to Fugazi and Jawbreaker and
Right.
Sunny Day Real Estate and Quicksand, and like those are the kinds of influences we were listening to during those times.
Yeah.
So I wasn't real focused on you know on anything else, on stuff that was on the radio or whatever. I was kind of you know blinders on, just kind of like into the kind of music that we were playing as a band.
Yeah.
And then that band kind of like I had started feeling like what we were trying to do as that band had kind of run its course, and um my interests musically had started, I don't want to say like outgrew any of that because I still love those bands. I still love that music and still listen to it. But my interests musically had shifted. You know what I mean? I was getting more
Right.
into a singer-songwritery kind of a place. And so I started kind of like a side thing on my own at home where I was kind of writing and recording solo songs. And I did an EP, put it out myself and started playing around like coffee houses and stuff as Have Gun Will Travel. And it was just kind
Okay.
of as a solo side thing. And so that's kind of around the time that, you know, of course, Bob Dylan and, Springsteen and, I was a big Tom Waits guy, still am. You know, it's through that kind of songwriter lens that I came back around to look at Tom Petty
Very cool.
and started realizing how amazing the songs were and how, it's like they're great rock and roll songs that you hear on the radio. It's like, awesome. Yeah, I know that song. And then you look at it from the angle of a songwriter and you realize how much craft there
Yeah.
is going on beneath this seemingly effortless kind of sound. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It sounds like there's no effort at all that goes into it. It sounds like it's just coming. You know what I mean? But you realize how well structured the songs are, how
Yeah.
well formed, the lyrics are and everything. And yeah, that's when it kind of like I realized how big a fan I already had been, but just wasn't really aware of.
That was my experience with it too, because I came to Petty later in life as well, and I've talked about this lots on the pod, but deciding to do this podcast and then really sort of tuning in with a bit more of a critical ear and trying to pick apart what's happening here,
Yeah,
when's that
yeah,
coming
yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah.
That's when you realize that A, Petty was just a supremely talented songwriter
Absolutely.
with a capital S, but
Yeah,
also had
yeah.
this phenomenal band behind him. Right.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and
The
again,
best.
and as a lyricist, I was listening to Desolation Row by Dylan the other day, and you just
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
what I mean, I can write songs, but I just don't know where that comes from. That's a
Yeah,
different
that's
level of, like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, that's, one of the things, you know, when we get into kind of later on talking about
Mhm.
favorite albums and that kind of thing, you know, it kind of like it kind of takes on a whole different thing when you kind of sit down, listen to the songs and pick up a guitar, start playing along and go, "Oh, okay. Interesting." You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah,
not I don't think that I would have done that. I don't think I would have gone there with that one. You know, I can see why he would have and, why it makes sense and why it's brilliant. Um, but it's just like, yeah, I mean, that kind of craft,
yeah.
and attention to the song is just other level.
It's kind of funny though, because talking about these influences, when you start listening to a band and you find out who people's influences are, and I would say off the top too, that what I find with Have Gun is that I can hear or I could sort of sense what some of these influences were,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're not rammed down my throat. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
good, good,
You don't
good,
really ever sound exactly like this or exactly like that. But
good,
it's funny
good.
because you mentioned Sunny Day Real Estate, right? I mean, how
Yeah.
many people did that band influence and
Oh,
really they never, quote unquote made it.
right,
And it's funny
right.
that every other member of the Foo Fighters, like the Germs, did the same thing with Pat
Yeah,
Smear.
yeah,
Those
totally.
guys were the foundations,
Of
rather than
course,
Dave.
absolutely. I mean, that's a lot of times that's the case where it's kind of like the the pioneer of something
Yeah,
isn't the one that's going to really kind of reap the benefits
yeah.
of their pioneering. It's going to be the next guy that comes along and does a version of that, that's going to kind of like because they're too far ahead of it. You know what I mean?
100%, yeah. Well, it was funny because we're talking and bouncing around a little bit, but back to the weekend, that's where for me it was sort of the artists and the acts that really sort of captured my attention and made me want to reach out and start talking to people were not necessarily the ones who played a really good version of Mary Jane's Last Dance. There was
Right,
a couple of people
right.
there who were really good at that, and that's always great. But it's again, it's when you take that song and you twist it and you
Yep.
just make it you make it sound like you rather than Tom. Because
Absolutely.
why would you want to try and sound like Tom? Because you're not gonna, right?
Right,
So
right, exactly. 100%.
so were there any acts at the weekend then that you sort of saw for the first time and thought, holy shit, those guys are good?
Um, that's a good question. There was, you know, I'm when we were there, I'm so kind of like wrapped up in trying to kind of like make sure that we've got our stuff together, we're ready to
Gotcha.
go, we're ready to roll and stuff. That I'm not really paying a lot of attention to what everyone else was doing. But there was a band, a couple bands before us on the stage outside, and I'm blanking on the name right now, but they had kind of a garage punky kind of a vibe. Um, and they were badass. And the songs that they did do, like you said, they kind of made them completely their own thing. And like that's kind of what I like to see. I like,
Yeah.
where it almost kind of takes you a minute to go, oh, there's that. Okay, now I see what they're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we were only there for that afternoon, so we didn't get to
Yeah.
experience like the whole weekend or anything like that. But I mean, it was a great lineup from what I was able to catch.
Yeah, it was lots of fun, man. And again,
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I found being there was at a festival. I mean, it's sort of festival, it's a small
Yeah,
festival,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
you'd usually expect a few drunks kind of getting into a bit of some pushing and shoving or crosswords. It was
Right.
just like peace, love, and harmony, man, all
Oh,
weekend.
yeah.
It was
Oh,
incredible.
everyone was great. Everyone was
Yeah.
so cool. We talked to a bunch of people. We had, you know, everyone we talked to that had seen our set was very complimentary and very kind of cool and into it. And yeah, I mean, it was a great vibe for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk then. Have Gun Will Travel. So it's a famous Western movie, which I'm assuming where it comes from. So why that? Why that name?
Okay, well, it does and it doesn't come from that. So
Okay.
my favorite movie is Stand By Me, which is kind of odd that we're kind of talking
Yeah.
about this now, kind of like in light of what just happened with Rob Reiner and everything. Um, but that's always been my favorite movie. There's a scene in the movie where the four friends are walking down the train tracks and they're singing a theme song to a TV show. The TV show was Have Gun Will Travel. They're singing the song Have Gun Will Travel. And
Right, right,
so
right.
that's kind of like, I had never seen the show. It's an old Western TV show from the 60s. I had never seen it, but the boys, you know, walking down the train tracks and singing that song, there was something about it that, you know, felt to me like that needed to be the name of whatever this project
Right.
is that I was starting. You know what I mean? So that's where it came from. You know, subsequently, I've gone back and watched some of the show. It's a great old Western TV show.
Yeah,
It's awesome. But that's not the kind of like origin for, why I call the band that.
that's really so it's secondhand then. That's even
Hmm.
cooler, I think, in some
Hmm.
ways, right? And yeah, I mean, Stand By Me, that it is the coming of age movie. I mean, that one and The
It is,
Sandlot are the
yeah.
two that I go back
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Like, if you know what I
100%.
mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so the band is you and your brother. So it's Dan. Is that you?
Danny.
My brother's name is Daniel as well. So,
Oh, is it really? Oh,
yeah, and
cool.
he's younger than me. So is he younger or older, or
He's younger. Yeah, he's
is he
3 years
younger as
younger
well?
than me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
So me and Danny, and then Scott Anderson, he's our guitar player. Sam Farmer is our drummer, and then Ed Stork plays the keys. And
and so,
so when I first started doing the solo kind of side thing as Have Gun and performing as Have Gun Will Travel, um, I was still doing the previous band with my brother,
right.
but I could feel it kind of coming to a close. And so it didn't take me a whole lot of convincing, but I had to kind of get him on board with kind of moving to toward the new project. You know what I mean? The
Right.
new thing that we're doing now. Um, and it didn't take a lot. It didn't take a lot of convincing. Like I said, he liked the songs. He picked up a stand-up bass for the first time ever in his life and just kind of got the hang of it. And
Right.
so when we first started, it was very much a, kind of a more acoustic, version of what we do now. And Scott was got in there right at the very beginning playing lap steel. Um, and then and then we started kind of putting the rest of the pieces together, and worked on our first full-length record as a band, and that came out in 2009.
And so sibling rivalry or sibling relationships within a band, not always, I mean, you look at
Not always
relationships,
great.
look at the Kinks, they didn't, it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
end
yeah.
well. So has
No,
there ever been
famously.
has that ever been an issue with you guys, or do you guys get on pretty well?
No, we've always, I mean, we've always, luckily, we just kind of get along, and music's kind of always been our thing. So,
Right.
you know, and I think that, Danny's good about kind of knowing that I kind of need to be the guy in charge,
Yeah. Yeah.
as the younger bro, he's a good younger brother. He kind of,
Right.
he knows where, how the dynamic needs to work. And so, that's kind of just been, it's always been a very easygoing kind of, relationship. There's never been any real differences or any kind of
Yeah.
like, any friction at all.
So because obviously with the other the main songwriter slash maybe soul songwriter, then how does that work in terms of when you're working up songs?
Mhm.
Do you do it the way Petty did, where you'll have most of the idea kind of framed out yourself, maybe even demoed up, and you bring that in? Or do
Mm.
you sort of come in with verse, chorus, let's see what happens? Like how much of that is organic in the room, and how much do you know I want it
Yeah.
to sound like this?
It is, for the most part, songs are pretty well structured and sometimes demoed, before I kind of bring them to the rest of the band. Sometimes I'll just I'll have a song just kind of almost fully formed and just we have a rehearsal space in a studio where we do all of our recording in Safety Harbor. And so we get together usually, like one evening a week, and work on stuff. And so if I have something new, I'll bring it. If I've demoed it at home, if I've done anything, I'll bring that, play it for everybody, and then we'll kind of start hashing it out.
Right.
If I haven't demoed it, I'll just start playing it, and it's like, it's kind of almost like a telepathy where, they just kind
Yeah.
of, they know what to do.
Yeah.
It's almost like I can kind of hear the parts in my head when I'm working the song out, and I bring it to the band, and they play it. They know
Yeah.
they know what needs to happen.
That is, as a songwriter who needs a band, that's 90% of it, is right. Finding those
Oh my
guys
God.
who complement what you're doing. I was going to say, like your guitar player Scott Anderson and it's got kind of that Petty Campbell symbiosis where you never seem to be treading on each other's toes. You always seem to be playing what the other person needs you to, or not playing, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's nice. I'm glad to hear you say that and pick up on that. That I do feel like it is that kind of guitar player kind of relationship where we do both take leads here and there.
Right.
In a similar way. Tom and Mike, had a very similar kind of dynamic. And I mean, obviously Mike is more the lead guitar player
Of course.
in the Heartbreakers. Um, but yeah, I mean, we just we both kind of again, it's like there's like a form of kind of telepathy where it's like if I feel like we're coming out of a chorus or something like that, and I want to kind of get into a solo, I'll just start going, and he'll kind of just chill,
Yeah.
and vice versa. You know what I mean? Like if we come out and we'll kind of look at each other, and he'll start going, and I'll kind of play rhythm, and just
Yeah.
that's it's just a very easygoing kind of dynamic. There's never really much discussion about it. You know what I mean? Unless there's something kind of that's just really not kind of meshing well, or something for some
Yeah.
reason, something's clashing with something else, but it's very rare.
Well, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about you guys being so tight on stage, and I love watching I like watching musicians on stage too, just to see that internal communication between the band, just
Yeah,
those
yeah.
little nods, like we'll
I
go
do
four
too. I
more,
love
or
it.
we'll do,
Yeah.
and that's the nerdy
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
right?
I
So
love seeing that too, where it's like I know what they just did, right?
yeah, yeah,
Between I know what just was like not said between them right there.
yeah.
Yeah, I love seeing that.
There's nothing worse, nothing in the world worse though. If the drummer drops a clam, everyone turns around and looks at him.
Oh
Well, don't
yeah.
look at him. Now you've just made him feel like he knows he screwed
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. If you never, acknowledge it, then it isn't a mistake. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
because the audiences don't, unless they're
Right.
musicians, they're not going to notice. Yeah.
They're not gonna pick it up. Yeah.
Okay, well let's jump into the new EP. So this
Awesome.
is Voyager Golden EP, and I have my gold 10-inch gold vinyl
Sweet.
in order, and it's coming.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Released on December 5th.
Yep.
So this is the eighth album slash EP that you guys have recorded, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about this one because it's a concept album or concept EP.
Yeah.
Does the concept come first and then you write to the concept, or did you have sort of the music around the songs and then find ways to sort of bind them thematically? What was the process for sort of putting the concept together?
Um, for this one, that's a good question. We kind of wrote these songs. We started recording this close to 3 years ago,
Okay.
and it's just taken kind of a long time getting around to kind of wrapping things up and getting the vinyl pressed, and kind of all the details and stuff that just take time.
Yeah.
But I think the for this one, I think it's different from the our previous concept record, which was Science from an Easy Chair. That one, we could talk about as well, but that came in a certain way. This one, um, I think I had the idea for it before the songs.
Okay.
I had just kind of like, gotten into learning about the Voyager program and the gold records that they sent out on
Yeah.
the two Voyager probes, and just kind of became fascinated by just kind of the audacity of it almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the kind of this wild optimism that if that that this would ever reach any destination at all, or you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And I was really kind of enamored by the idea of it. And so, yeah, I think just the concept came before the songs did. And then the songs, as they were being written, kind of developed with each of them kind of uh, their own relationship to the concept.
Okay. So do you write music first then? Is that how, and then you write lyrics after, or do you get, is there a little bit of a blend? What's your
It depends on
general?
the song.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's, each one kind of has its own way of coming into the world. And I think it's generally my the kind of creative process starts with like just kind of sitting on the couch with a guitar and kind of watching something on TV and
Right.
half paying attention to it and
Right.
half because I feel like being kind of like only partially focused on what you're doing um, kind of opens a conduit
Yeah.
subconsciously. You know what I mean? That like if you're totally focused, you get kind of in your own way. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you start thinking about your songwriting, kind of like the rules and the regulations and how um, and structure, and you start kind of thinking about stuff. Whereas when you're kind of half focused on something else, you kind of let the subconscious kind of play around a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when that happens, you kind of catch yourself off guard and go, "Oh, that's a cool chord progression that
Yeah.
that I kind of wasn't really intending on doing." And so a lot of songs kind of start from that place, and then a melody comes along, and along with the melody comes kind of like a cadence or like a certain kind of rhythm that the melody wants to take. And
Right.
so that I feel like that's when you start humming along and just kind of mouthing gibberish, you know what I mean? And then kind of maybe a phrase forms, and then the phrase kind of informs kind of where you're going to go after that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's if it's in the best of conditions, it's coming from a subconscious place, I think.
Of course, and it's what always fascinates me. Everyone kind of rags on Nashville and the Nashville Machine, and in some cases, fairly so. But I always think about how amazing that is that guys can just walk into a room on a Monday morning and sit down and write 5 songs.
I
But that to
can't
me is
even
just
I can't even wrap my head around it.
no. I can't. I mean, okay, there's formulaic and there's some, but even so, you're still coming up with it's like wow, that I just have to wait until a song comes, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, same. I mean, I have the utmost, admiration for people who can just sit down and do it like that.
yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't work like that for me.
no, me. Well, so I wanted to ask you about the album cover too for this one because I was going to say I love the aesthetic I like, and even because I'm a design nerd as well,
Oh, cool.
and just the font, and you've got so the Have Gun Will Travel is slightly bigger than if it's the song name, whatever. I like that,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
the album cover for this one is or the EP is it's kind of got that washed out yellow filter on it. But what is the image?
So it's a NASA image from um, the JPL, which is Jet Propulsion Laboratories, which is where they do, a lot of their research and development and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, they were actually building the first Voyager probe in that picture. You can see it. It's kind
Was
of
that
like,
what it is?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the big white thing with kind of a cone shape, uh, kind of a thing. That's the actual Voyager probe.
Cool.
And
Okay.
then there's like a really, really long, kind of like 30-foot long, almost antenna like thing
Yeah.
that they have propped up on a bunch of different surfaces throughout the rest of the room.
Okay, that makes sense now.
So it was just this random, I was going through like NASA's, catalog of imagery and stuff that they have, all these images and stuff online. And that picture just said something to me. And I was like, this,
Yeah.
this is, I just like it almost, it almost has kind of like a, you know, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory kind of a vibe to
Yeah.
it.
The original version.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like the 70s version. It's like, yeah, it just has a real weird, crazy kind of lab, kind of vibe to it that I just, it almost doesn't matter what the composition of it is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just kind of the aesthetic
100%.
effect. You know what I mean?
But it's
So
funny
yeah.
because what threw me off with it was because you've got, I mean, obviously it is, you can tell it's some sort of lab, but then you've just got these two chairs with the
Yeah,
caution
yeah.
tape. And that's what throws you off. It's like, well, that's incongruous. That shouldn't
Right.
be there in a controlled, a highly
Yeah,
scientific
yeah, yeah.
laboratory. So
Right, right, right.
super
I
cool, man.
agree. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, let's
Yep.
let's dig into some of these songs then, because
All
I
right,
went
cool.
straight out the gate. Instructions for you. So, I mean, if you like, I mean, I'm a huge Genesis fan. I love Dream Theater. I like big concept pieces, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
to
Yeah.
get a bit of exposition right
Okay.
off the top, right, to sort of set the stage, and that's what
Yeah.
instructions for you says. It's a lot of percussion, and then we get that sort of dialogue that's taken in from, I'm assuming, sort of broadcasting things. But then you've got this. It's almost like Mark Knopfler, Dave Gilmour-esque
Yeah, yeah.
guitar
The
stuff going on
guitar.
underneath it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super, super cool. Builds up that tension
Awesome.
because it ends up with strings, right? So
Yeah, yeah. That's cool, man. Yeah. So that um so the idea for it, I always like some instrumental music with a little bit of kind of dialogue over it. You know what I mean? Or monologue or,
yeah,
um there are bands that that I've been fans of that have done those kinds of things, and whenever it's done well, it just kind of sets up a vibe, and it kind of puts the listener in a certain state. And we found this audio that's actually Carl Sagan
right.
talking about what the plan for the Voyager was going to be, like what the purpose was. Um, and so we kind of isolated that audio, and Scott, who does he's our guitar player, but also like the engineer for our recording sessions. So
Okay.
he kind of like added all this, all these effects to it and stuff, and some delay, and
Yeah.
and the idea was to kind of have that instrumental intro be, like kind of an overture of what you're going to get with the other songs. You know what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
kind of like there's a couple of riffs in there that you're going to hear in other songs on the record. And I like doing stuff like that where it's like, oh, you know what? This is kind of a version. It's a different version. It's a different way they're doing it. Maybe a different rhythm or whatever. But it's like we did that on Science from an Easy Chair as well. We had kind
Yeah.
of like a theme, kind of a recurring kind of a melody or whatever. I like doing stuff like that because it really makes it feel like more of a, um, you know, like more of a piece, like more of one kind of, piece of work, as
Yeah.
opposed to a collection of songs. And so, yeah. And so we kind of like, we started with just that kind of the rhythm of it,
Hmm.
the percussion of it, and the minor key that it's in. Um, and yeah, there's definitely some kind of Pink Floyd influence on the guitar. I was doing that guitar stuff on
Right. Mhm.
on there, and it's yeah. I mean, Knopfler's I'm a huge Knopfler fan as far as guitar goes, and David Gilmour, of course. So yeah, there's definitely some Pink Floyd influence on that one. Um, in the title as well, it's Interstellar Overture, which they have
Right. Of
Interstellar Overdrive.
course.
So there's a little bit of a play on that, a little bit. Um, but the actual title, Instructions for Use, was Sam's idea, our drummer, because Carl Sagan says that Instructions for Use in the kind of like
Right.
monologue that he's saying in there. And I had Interstellar Overture as the title for that, and we were listening to it after the sample was put on there. Sam was like, "That Instructions for Use would be a cool title." I'm like, "Yeah, it would."
Yeah.
So
But
we're gonna do
it's
both. We're gonna,
abstract. It's abstract, right? Because it
yeah,
gives
yeah,
you that sort of, well, what the hell does that mean? You know what I mean? It's
right,
got that. When
totally.
you talk about Sagan, my favorite story about the whole Voyager thing was when they were putting the gold disc there and they were, what music are we going to put on there? And we got some Bach and we got some this and we got some that. And someone said, well, why don't we put another Bach piece on? And Sagan said, well, I think that would just be showing off. It's a
Yeah,
good
that's
point.
great. That is a fair point. Yeah, that's good.
It's funny too because you said it's not a collection of songs, and I've got written down in caps in bold, "This is an album!" Exclamation mark, not a collection of songs.
Oh,
Which
awesome,
you
awesome.
know,
Glad to
um,
hear it.
I think. I
That's
mean, you
awesome.
can listen to Gravity Blues, Into the Distance, Missions. You can listen to those as standalone, and if you've got a Have Gun Will Travel playlist and you want to put it on shuffle, it will be okay.
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
definitely for me is I'm only ever really going to listen to this as a whole piece because it is a whole
Awesome.
piece. So
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Yeah, that's cool. And that's, you know, as when we do records, I obviously you want to put your best material on an album. There are songs that aren't going to make the cut, you know. Um, but I like the idea of a band putting some thought beyond just these are some songs. These are kind of like our best tunes that we
yeah,
got. Um, I like knowing that a band is kind of thinking bigger than that. A band is kind of thinking, kind of taking a bigger picture kind of approach to making a
yeah.
record.
Well, even down to things like sequencing, right? I mean, I'm a huge
Hmm.
Queen fan as well. And you look at Sheer Heart Attack, and side B of Sheer Heart Attack is sequenced just like you
Oh,
literally couldn't
crazy. Yeah, yeah.
imagine. You know what I mean? You can't imagine
Absolutely.
those songs in any other. So, and again, I think
100%.
you guys absolutely nailed that side. So, I want to
Cool.
talk about Gravity Blues because great guitar lick, and I was going to say too, I'm a hobbyist drummer. I love the snare sound.
Oh,
It's got that kind
nice.
of this chains are sort of. I don't know how far up they were. It feels like they were dropped down a little bit because you get that real sort
You
of
get a kind of
tone to
like,
it.
yeah, it's not a super quick, snappy snare. There's some kind of like,
Yeah.
some rattle to it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Sam's a badass player, and as soon as we kind of start working on anything, he finds the right groove. He's a really groove oriented drummer, and he gets right in there, finds
Right.
finds what exactly what is gonna fit for that riff or for that song. So yeah, I mean he nailed it on
Yeah.
that one.
But it's also got, I mean, this is the first, I'd say, like, I always look for, I call it moments in songs or especially on albums as a whole where there's, that bit in a song that you're kind of waiting for. You
Mm-hmm.
know it's coming and you
Oh
can't wait
yeah,
to
yeah,
get
yeah,
in.
yeah.
And when we get the
Totally.
breakdown in the bridge in this one, you go to that palm muted
Yep.
guitar and then the synth comes in. It's like, all right, that's cool. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
dude. Awesome. Yeah, that's our, our keyboard player, Ed. You know, we kind of made it, we were kind of making an effort to get a little kind of spacey on this one. You know what I mean? We're like, we're making kind
Yeah.
of a space themed record. Let's get a little, let's get a little spacey on it. And he came with some pretty cool, keyboard sounds and cool samples and stuff that he was bringing in. And that little part right in the instrumental section of that song was
Yeah.
badass. Yeah.
But like I say, you've got the overall theme, the overarching theme, but you do still have, and I talk about this so much on the show. One thing I love about Petty's songwriting is if he was writing about something specific, he almost always managed to work in that universality as well, right? Where you could sort
Yeah.
of you could overlay your own interpretation onto it. And so a line in Gravity Blues like, want to break the chains that bind me, want to leave the world behind me, that's got, it's got the sort of the immediate sense of this satellite and Voyager, whatever, but it's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
got that thing of we all feel that from time to time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's kind of like, and that came late in the song actually. We had already recorded my vocal tracks and everything, and that wasn't there. And we were listening to it, and I think it was a friend of ours, Sean, who helps us, Sean Kyle. He's a good buddy of ours, and he engineered the Science from an Easy Chair record. And every once in a while, we bring him in to our studio when we're working on something new, just to get some other ears other than the
Yeah.
band on the songs. And I think he was even kind of like made the suggestion, like, I think there should be another little vocal thing somewhere right here, because it was all kind of instrumental in that section.
Okay.
And so that's when I real quick wrote those two lines and kind of banged it out in the studio. And then, you know, and then that really stuck. And so that's after that is when we kind of like took that part and started repeating it at the end of the song.
Gotcha.
And it's
Cool.
like, oh yeah, that was kind of like the missing piece of that puzzle.
Isn't that great when that happens though? Because there's
Oh
definitely a
man.
satisfaction when you sit and you're playing her and then you think, okay, I've got a lyric and I've got an idea, and you write a great line, you think that's awesome. When they
Yeah.
come quick like that, when you're having to adapt, that's just like that's
Oh
even better.
dude. Yeah, dude. I mean, and that happens from time to time. It's like I'm you know, I'm quite a procrastinator when it comes to finishing songs. I'm great with starting
Yeah.
songs. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. I know
the
exactly what you
initial
mean.
kind of inspiration and the sitting down and being excited about like coming, like, stumbling onto a new song idea,
Yeah.
like that's the exciting part. Um, it's the filling in the rest of it. There
The
needs to be
work.
a second verse. There needs to be, like, there needs to be this bridge section. I have the melody, but I don't have the lyrics for it yet. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times we'll get to the point where it's time for me to, get in the studio and do vocal stuff. And I've got my notepad, in front of me, and I'm scratching it out like while in between takes of
Yeah.
recording them, recording the vocals. So
Cool. Well, if
yeah,
we get into the next song, then another thing that I think with Voyager being a subject and with it being sort of man's statement about like let's get something out into the universe just in case anything else out there, it
yeah,
gives you
yeah,
that sort of you've got that big picture that you can play with. And there's a line in Into the Distance again. When I heard this, I was like, what? And it's the end. Sometimes it seems justify the means. We proceed to sow the seeds of our own extinction. And I was
yeah.
like, that is heavy shit, man. That is heavy.
Yeah, well, I was kind of going through it. That was written kind of like, oh man, I think that was the first song written for this
Okay.
EP, and it may have been close to 4 years ago that I started writing that song. And it was like during kind of COVID times, and things were feeling pretty, you know,
Yeah.
pretty kind of tense and, kind of like uncertain, and so there was definitely some heavy thoughts going on during the writing of the song. And yeah, I mean, it's not hugely optimistic necessarily in that line. I think the
Yeah.
song is ultimately, but that line is definitely kind of like, yeah, I mean, we're kind of screwing ourselves. We're screwing ourselves here. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
know if you swear on or whatever, but
You,
uh,
you're free to speak freely.
free to speak my mind. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's, we're in the process of kind of, fucking ourselves as a civilization,
Yeah.
and it's tough to kind of watch and be a part of, because you can't not be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like we're in the middle of it, whether we
Yeah.
want to be or not.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's lighten it up a little bit then, because another thing about this song I would say is that it's probably the best whistling intro since Winds of Change
Ah,
by
nice.
Scorpions.
Oh yeah, dude. That is a great whistle. That is a great whistle intro.
You don't hear them very often anymore. People don't use
No,
it
I
as often
know.
anymore.
I know. Well, I mean, I'm like coming at it from, you know, like a Ennio Morricone spaghetti western
Of
kind of
course.
vibe. You know what I mean? Like those, he's one of my favorite composers, and those spaghetti western movies, that he scored,
Yeah.
uh, are, it just has a vibe that nothing else has. And,
Yeah.
whether it's kind of like the guitar work, the kind of almost surf rocky type guitar work that goes on to some of those songs, the wild string compositions that are happening, um, or the crazy, weird vocal screams in the background, that you hear from time to time,
Yeah.
or the whistling. You know what I mean? It's like it's just puts you in a very specific kind of frame of mind, and
Yeah.
I love the vibe of it. Just I love that kind of stuff. There was one other song that we had years ago on I think our second record, called Salad Days. It's a song about my hometown. It was kind of I wrote a song, just kind of a little love song to my hometown of Bradenton, Florida, and I have a whistle solo in that
Okay.
one as well. So it's not the first time I've ever done it, but I do like doing that kind of thing.
It's funny too, because I don't necessarily think people know that it's not easy to whistle on stage. Like, it's not as easy as you might
No,
think.
it's
Like,
kind of
it's
tricky. Yeah, yeah. To do it on stage, and that's another thing with that song. We had, started working on it so long ago, and having it just recently come out. I've just in the last couple months played it out for the first time live,
right.
and had to kind of like, okay, because you got to get your breath right. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
you gotta kind of make sure you're gonna sustain enough breath for what you got, going on. So it is a little tricky for sure.
But no one tells you that about singing either, right? The breathing
That's
part
true.
is
The
is a
breathing
big part
part,
of it.
you got to figure it out on your own. Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to say too, we'll finish up on this one then, though, but that chord progression into the chorus, and I'd kind of name check the Kinks earlier, it's got a very Ray Davis flavor
Oh,
to it. It's like
cool.
Ray Davis would do something like that, because
Oh,
it's
I
not
love
what you
it.
expect. So,
Right, right. Oh, I love that. Like the pre-chorus kind
yeah,
of thing. Yeah, cool, man.
that step
Awesome.
up, yeah. Okay, Mission to Nowhere. Again, I love the intro to this one. It's got that, it's very gentle, and then you get this sort of shuffle beat that comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and the vocal on this one, we haven't really talked about your voice yet, and for me, a singer's voice is make or break with the band, right? If I don't like the singer's voice, it doesn't
Yeah,
really
you
matter how
can't.
good they are.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. It's like you can't get past it.
yeah, it's got that there's desperation to the delivery in this one. But I
Cool.
wanted to ask you about this, because I listened to this song about 7 or 8 times in a row, because I was trying to figure out if it speeds up, and I don't think it does, but there's something in the way it works. There's a circularity to the main part of it. It's like an optical illusion, where I'm like, it's got to be speeding up, because it's got to be like. So I'm to the point where I'm like, I'm going to tap this out. I'm going to tempo this.
Yeah,
Nope,
yeah,
nope, no. It's sitting at exactly the same tempo. I'm like, I
yeah.
don't know how they're doing that. Then that's weird.
Well, so we go from there's a swing to the beat, there's a
Hmm.
shuffle to the beat, and then at a certain point in the song, we lose the shuffle and go to a straight beat, but keep it the same tempo.
Right.
So I think that might be what
That's the
you're
bit that's
feeling
confusing
right
me.
there.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, because it's the same tempo, but we lose the swing
Yeah.
and start playing it straight for a few, and then I think Sam slips back into the swing by the end of
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean?
Okay, that scans then. Okay, that's
I
really
think
interesting.
that's
So
probably what it is.
with a decision like that then to do sort of, because you could leave that rhythm in and it would
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that decision is that Sam then saying, you know what, let's just do the shuffle for this part. How about if we try this? And then you just run through it and think, yeah, actually, yeah, that sounds really cool.
No, because what that was I had the riff. There's a riff where it kind of breaks, and there's a riff that's like, kind of comes in hard, like a pretty hard kind of rock and roll riff. Um, but it's a straight riff and it doesn't have a thing. So I had to kind of explain to Sam, like,
Ah,
when we
okay.
come back in after this guitar riff, it's going to be same tempo. We're losing the shuffle because I want to play this part straight. You know what I mean?
Cool.
So that was just one of those things where it was like, it's a cool idea, but it only is going to work if everyone is on board with it. If
Yeah.
everybody knows what we're doing and is able to kind of like, properly kind of make it happen. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm again, it's, I'm fortunate enough, and I totally don't take it for granted. I'm fortunate enough to have these awesome musicians
Yeah.
that just get it without much discussion about it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, we just talked about moments too, and this is, that when we get into that twin guitar break in the
Yeah, yeah.
middle, that's the one. It's like, oh, that's the release. That's when,
Oh,
because
good, good.
there's a lot of minor and there is a lot of sort of tension that you're building up.
Yeah.
When that comes in, it's just like, that's just happy face, right? That makes me smile.
Good,
It makes me
good,
laugh.
good,
It's so,
good.
so good.
I love that stuff. I mean, Thin Lizzy, and you know what I mean? Like the kind of the like harmonized guitar
Yeah.
stuff. You know, we don't get, I mean, we should do more of that, honestly. It's so much fun, and Scott's so easy to kind of work with and work out those parts with.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and that just, it's such a kind of uplifting part of that song.
Yeah.
And it's when we've been playing that one out for a while now, probably, for 8 or 9 months or something, maybe close to a year we've been playing that one out. Um, and that's definitely a part where everyone kind of picks up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the vibe in the room, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, there's that part." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's one of those things where it's like people that have heard it before are looking forward to getting to that part of the song,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I would. Next time I come see you, that's the one I'll be looking
Awesome.
forward to. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so Save the Sound. And this one, so this one we'll be talking about influencing because I'm like, this guy must have listened to The Cure at some time
Oh
in his life
yeah.
because it's got
Oh,
a
for sure,
very,
for sure.
it's got that very sort of ringing, I grew up in Britain, so that early 80s, mid 80s,
Yeah,
indie, oh,
absolutely.
I'm so upset with the world and all
Of
that kind of stuff.
course, of
But it's
course.
got that tone to it. It doesn't stay the whole time, and then I
Yeah,
really like later on how that lead guitar then comes in underneath the vocal melody because that can be a challenge too. Right? Like
for
if you
sure.
don't have a really good guitar player who knows what he's doing, he's just going to get in the way.
Yeah, you're talking about like the slide part that's like
Yeah, yeah,
the yeah, that part, that was another one of those things where we had the song pretty well put together and mostly recorded. And because of the fact that Scott engineers most of our recording sessions, there's a lot of times where he won't even write his part until
right,
the song's already done almost. You know what I
right.
mean? And that was one of those things where it was like we had it pretty well done. We had it mostly recorded. I think I already had done vocals even at that point. And Scott had talked about he wanted to do something on lap steel, but we didn't know yet what it was going to be. And a lot of times he'll do his parts kind of in isolation, like in private when we're not
Gotcha.
even there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think he feels more comfortable kind of working stuff out and taking his time, and which I totally get. I'm the same way with writing the songs.
Yeah.
And so then, yeah, we next time we went after we were kind of in the middle of mixing the record and we were working on that song, and he played that part, and I was like, that's so cool because it doesn't, it's not stepping on the toes of the vocals or anything. It's kind of doing its own thing, occupying its own space, but adding such a cool kind of counter melody to what's going on, you know?
Yeah. And it all that also becomes all about the mix then too, right? So you need to
Oh,
have
yeah,
someone who knows how to balance those frequencies
absolutely.
out so to make sure that you've got that separation of sound.
Absolutely. You have to because there's a lot of stuff going on with that one. There's multiple guitar things
Yeah.
happening. Um, there's the kind of arpeggiated guitar thing that I'm doing, which is a it's got like a kind of echo delay thing going on
Yeah.
with it. There's, the strummy guitar part. There's a lot of guitar stuff happening. And that can get really jumbled up in that kind of mid-range, in that kind
Yeah.
of like mid-range frequency area if it's not kind of placed, you know, in the if it's not placed in the mix, properly.
Yeah.
And Scott's always been, really good at that.
But it's also got a great atmosphere. And we say that strumming pattern though too, because that strumming pattern's it's full on, right? Like it's quite a
Yeah,
quick
yeah,
strumming pattern. So
yeah.
again, it could get away from you if you weren't sort of paying
Totally,
attention to the
totally,
mix. So, yeah.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a fun one. And honestly, we haven't even really started playing that one out yet.
Yeah.
Um, it's a tricky one because I sing that song in such a kind of low vocal register,
Right.
and that can be tricky with, as loud of a band as we can be when we play live to kind of
Right.
be able to kind of keep
Get
yourself
over.
in that, yeah, to keep yourself in that kind of low register and still be able to kind of project loud enough to make it over the band. I mean, we'll get it and we'll sort it out, but yeah, we're not fully, we haven't fully got ourselves that one worked out yet, but
Yeah.
we'll get there.
Well, I should say too that just a shout out to Sam, your drummer, because the drum work in that coming back out of the bridge
Oh
was like
yeah, yeah.
absolute chef's kiss. Just
Yeah,
beautiful.
absolutely. I agree, man. I agree. That's yeah, that build section, it's again, it's like it's one of those things where in the wrong hands,
Yeah.
it's just going to fall apart, you know what I mean? Like the kind of impact of it isn't going to be felt if it's not done by someone who's can competently kind of, you know, handle the reins
Yeah.
of a beast like that. You know what I mean? And Sam is
Absolutely.
he's just on it. He gets it. You know what I mean? He comes to the to the challenge.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the closer then, because we talked about the opener sort of setting the stage and everything, and we'll get to how this one ends, because I love how this song ends.
Oh,
But
cool.
everything is made of stars. The sort of the parallel I've drawn with this one is, and it doesn't sound anything like the song I'm going to kind of reference, but it's got the same sense of grandeur as 5 Years by Bowie, because it's
Oh
got that
yeah, yeah,
almost
yeah, yeah.
apocalyptic kind of,
Totally, totally,
you know what I mean? So it's got
absolutely.
that scale and that scope and that ambition that I really, really love. And again, when you get to a line like, as my systems power down for good and all communications fail,
Yeah,
like, that's just a killer line to sort of finish this story. Because at that point, there's no sequel to this. It's done,
yeah,
right?
right, right. That's kind of yeah. I mean, it ends where it ends. Um, Yeah, dude. I mean, there was definitely Bowie in mind for this song. I mean, I feel like you can't do a space themed record without at least kind of acknowledging
A nod. Yeah.
a nod to Bowie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that. But for sure, I mean, that's there's definitely some Bowie influence on that one.
On horns too, though. Right? I mean, again, they come out of nowhere, and
Yeah, yeah.
there's a guy named Josh Ritter. I don't know if you've ever listened to
I
him.
know
He
Josh Ritter. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it does the same thing where he'll use horns, but in a song that you wouldn't really necessarily expect.
Yeah,
And because they
totally.
haven't been on the rest of the album, they hit you, they broadside you in the best
It's
way,
that
right?
much
Because
more
yeah,
impactful. Yeah.
yeah,
I agree. Yeah, that part. Our buddy Andy Bray. He's an awesome. He plays trombone, trumpet, and mandolin. He's actually when, earlier years in the band when we were kind of more of a, you know, what I guess you'd call maybe a kind of more kind of Americana type band
Yeah.
than kind of like straight up rock and roll, you know what I mean? When we were more folky, um, he was kind of full-time mandolin player. He played with us on pretty much every record. And then as we kind of started moving into the more kind of straight rock and roll stuff that we've been doing on the last few records, um, he's doing less on the mandolin and more with the horns. And so I had that arrangement in mind going into that instrumental section of the song.
Right.
And I remember when we were kind of putting it together, when we were, recording his parts, because he did both the trombone and the trumpet. I knew that they needed to have a kind of a counter. They needed to have kind of a conversation with each other, and I also, this kind of brings back the what we were talking about earlier about the like musicals. One of my favorites is the movie Popeye. I don't know if you've ever seen the
Sure have.
Robert Altman Popeye movie with Robin Williams. So Harry Nilsson composed the soundtrack to that.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
All the musical numbers were Harry Nilsson.
Okay.
He composed all the all the instruments and everything. So there's a kind of a theme song of the town of Sweet Haven, which is where this takes place, the movie Popeye. And it's got this amazing kind of this amazing progression and this horn section that's doing this thing, but it all sounds a little ramshackle. It all sounds a little bit like it's on the verge of kind of falling apart,
Right.
And there's such a charm to that, and such a kind of like endearing kind of a, it's one of the things that I love about that movie so much, is just how the songs are amazing, but they sound like they're almost not gonna make it, And so I kind of wanted that vibe with this instrumental section in the middle there, so we've got the horns
Yeah.
doing their thing, or the trombone doing the main melody, and then the trumpet kind of answering back with its, kind of counter melody. And and one thing that I did there that's not ever going to be, other than me telling you this, no one's ever going to pick up on it. And, me having had the conversation like with the band, it's never going to, no one's ever going to pick up on it. And that's fine. And I don't, that doesn't bother me at all. I like it just for the kind of like self-satisfaction of having put it in there. But so the actual dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
those are the notes in the
Space
movie
Odyssey?
Close Encounters
Close
of the Third Kind. When
I'll be damned.
they kind of are talking with the spaceship, but
Yeah.
in tones. The machine, I mean the flying saucer is, has those, like, plays those tones. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
And then the NASA guy or whoever, is sitting there with a big keyboard, and he kind of answers back with those dun 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 dun, and then it does it again louder and louder and louder. So
Yeah.
that horn section, that melody right there, is from Close Encounters of the Third
I
Kind.
never picked that up. Now I'm going to be listening to that when I get back. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And it's stuff like that, though, I think, there's two parts to that, right? You should put stuff into your songs just for you, right?
I totally,
sure.
I totally agree.
And then the other thing is that sometimes people do notice and they go, "Hey, dude, was that deliberate?" And they're like,
Right.
"Totally deliberate."
Yeah, man. And it makes it that much more fun when somebody does actually catch something like that.
Yeah.
Because, other than me telling you right now, I don't, I'm telling you because you seem like someone who would be interested to know that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
100%, yeah.
I'm not going around telling people, check this thing out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, big old
So
music nerd. I was gonna say too
yeah.
though, because we talked about and I said like the intro's great, and then the outro to this, because we get this real low frequency, almost like a hum pulse kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, which to me that's the propulsion system driving Voyager on,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then that cuts. So then we kind of know that Voyager's going to be done here, and we know it's going to die. So then the engine
Mm-hmm.
cuts, and you've got that sort of that tone over top of it, and then that goes. So that's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
the propulsion system's done, so it's drifting, and then it stops communicating.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
poor
yeah.
Voyager's gone. And
Yeah,
I love the way
totally,
that's a
dude.
great way of ending it. Yeah.
That's cool, man. I'm glad you picked up on that. That was all Scott. He did that. We had done something with guitar and a delay pedal um that he just kind of like brought it down to this kind of sub frequency,
Right.
and let it kind of ride out, as long as we let it ride there at the end. But yeah, that was all Scott's idea. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a again, a great little end point, right? Just a great little
Yeah, yeah,
chord to the end of this
cool.
album. Well, dude, yeah, I mean, we'll get into some of the other stuff here, but I just wanted to sort of cap that and say that, like I said to you in offline, I love a concept album. I'm just a sucker for a concept album. And something like this that's tight, it's what, 30 minutes or something around there.
If
It's
that,
not
maybe probably
super long.
26, 27,
Yeah,
something
so
like that.
it's a quick listen, but it never sits doing one thing for too long. There's
Right.
lots of, like I said, there's lots of those moments where, as a music fan, I can say, oh, that's super cool. Or they're modulating that part of that solo,
Yeah.
that riff, whatever. But then I think sometimes a concept album can forget to also be melodic and have good songs, but the songs
It's a
themselves
good point.
are
Yeah.
still good as well. You know what I mean? So for
Cool,
everyone
cool.
listening, I think that if you're any sort of music fan, you like rock and roll, I think everyone will gonna love this one. And there'll be a link in the episode notes. Go check out all that kind of stuff, and there'll be lots of stuff
Awesome,
in there.
man.
But
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. I
um,
appreciate it.
but you sort of said there, just I'm talking about that last song, that you used to be a lot more folky,
Hmm.
and I'd written down some. I can't remember which one. Oh, the song "Tidal Wave" off Strange Chemistry.
Hmm.
That's almost like I'd written. It's because like a Celtic rockabilly thing. It's got a
Oh, yeah.
really weird vibe to it that I love.
Oh,
But
yeah. Cool, cool.
but I wanted to talk to you about Science from an Easy Chair then, just super quick on that one, because
Yeah.
that's got such a different vibe to this album, and
Hmm.
such a different vibe to Strange Chemistry, that I can sort of see that evolution from that folkier Americana kind of
Yeah.
thing
Yeah, yeah,
into,
yeah.
and there's still those tones and those flavors are still in,
For sure, for sure.
especially Strange Chemistry, but
Yeah.
it's again that one's got, I don't know, two or three or four just instrumental interlude pieces to really kind of
Yeah. The
build it
little
out.
kind of like vignettes almost, it's kind of
Yeah,
sonic vignettes, like,
yeah. And then you got, so here's the good old Shakespeare. Just kind of made me chuckle because
Yeah.
that's just a great little hook, and it's got the rainy day woman progression. I'm like,
Oh
that's
yeah,
cool. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Yeah, that was the way that whole record came about. That was going to be an EP as well, initially. And it honestly, I had the song True Believers fully written. We had recorded a kind of demo version of it, and no plans to make a concept record, just that song.
Right.
Uh, my my wife, who, I'll play her stuff kind of before we really go anywhere with it, or do anything with it or whatever.
Yeah.
She's always been a really good kind of like kind of sounding board for ideas and songs in their kind of infancy and kind of early stages. I played that for her, and she was like, that reminds me of the Shackleton story. And I hadn't even been familiar with it. So the
Okay.
song True Believers was written before I was even familiar with the story of Shackleton
Oh
and the
wow.
Endurance. Yeah. It was just had a nautical theme to it. And it was
Yeah.
really more about the band and kind of some feelings of frustration that I was going through at the time, where, we'd had some trouble with we'd had some record label issues and stuff. And, we were feeling a little frustrated with kind of like where things were at the time. And so the song True Believers, you know, this boat has never been anybody's flagship or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of more about the band than it is about
Oh
an
wow. Okay.
actual nautical event.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just using the nautical thing as kind of a metaphor for kind of what we were going through as a band. Played it for Raina, my wife, and she listened to it and said that it really reminded her of the story of Shackleton and the Endurance. And so at that point, I read the book Endurance
Okay.
and just again, became completely obsessed and fascinated. Uh, read the book, just like couldn't believe it was a true story
Yeah.
that had actually happened to these people. And,
Yeah.
and that's when the seeds of the idea for doing kind of a concept thing came about. But again, I thought it was just going to be maybe a 5 or 6 song thing. And the more I got into it and the more that we wrote a few songs, we kind of got 4 or 5 together and went into the studio with our buddy Sean Kyle in Tampa and started working on it. And as we were kind of recording, because we were doing it at kind of a slow pace, we didn't, Danny and I lived in Bradenton, the studio's in Tampa, it's an hour away.
Right.
We were only able to get up there a couple evenings a week to really get in any work done on the recording. And, that's tricky when you're trying to make a record. It's hard to get momentum going when you're only working in these short bursts of
Yeah.
time, 4 or 5 hours at a time. It's hard to get any real kind of momentum going. And so we were very slowly kind of chipping away at these songs. And as we were doing that, I was reading more and more about the Shackleton story and about Endurance, and I was started watching every documentary I could kind of find
Yeah.
online, or the Nova documentaries, um, you know, and just really digging into the story. I read the book a second time, and as I read it the second time, I got my notebook out, started taking notes and kind of putting together what I thought could be an outline for
Right.
actual full kind of concept record. And so that's kind of, it just started building as we were in the process of recording it. It built from like a 4 or 5 song thing into the full length LP that it became, with all the little sonic vignettes that we made and stuff like that to kind
Yeah.
of like set the scene for, those are specifically recorded to set the scene for where we are in the story. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's one where you can hear, you know, the
You can hear the docks in one of them. You can sort of hear the ports, and
yeah,
you can
yeah.
yeah.
And there's one where you can like hear them hammering the little lifeboat that they ended up taking,
Yeah.
on the rescue party little trip that they went on. There's, I think we ended up finding some like samples of like penguins that we threw in
Right.
there, and it was like, and like the sounds of ice breaking and stuff like that. So it was like, that's, we went full in, as far as like, if we're doing a concept album, it needs to be a sonic journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
needs to be a concept album full stop, you know what I mean? Yeah, and then it ended up taking us probably like 8 or 9 months in and out of the studio to kind of
Yeah.
finish recording it, but like I'm very pleased with how it ended up turning out. Ultimately, I think we did what we set out to do.
Yeah. But I love that too. It's born of an obsession. 'Cause
Yeah,
I've been talking about
totally.
this with people lately. Obsession these days is sort of it's taken as always a bad thing by
Right.
most people. If you're obsessed, it's not
Yeah, yeah.
usually used in a
It's
positive light. But
right,
but
right.
I think if you're obsessed about, because I always, I mean, Mozart was obsessed,
A
Feynman was
hundred
obsessed,
percent.
Carl
A hundred
Sagan was
percent.
obsessed.
A hundred
Obsession's good
percent.
if you challenge it healthily, right? So
Absolutely, absolutely. I think anyone who, has something that they're passionate about, um, has to kind of experience a level of obsession with it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you know, where's the motivation
yeah,
to, to, you know, to chase after this thing or to pursue it? You know what I mean?
Well, especially as a musician, because these days it's hard to make a go, right? It's hard to
A
pay your
hundred,
bills
yeah,
from being a musician. So you've really got to care about it. And of course, you know, I mean,
absolutely.
uh,
It's
you know,
more a passion than it is,
yeah,
a job. You know what I mean? It's more of an obsession and a compulsion, I would
yeah.
say, than it is any sort of just, source of income or anything like that.
Well, it's, you know, people talk about, again, we go back to Dylan. But why is he still writing? Why is, you
Right.
know, he's 80 years. Well, how could he not? He's a
Exactly.
songwriter. That's what he is. You know, he's
That's
not.
what he is. That's what he's compelled. It's a compulsion.
Yeah.
That's what he's compelled to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Matt, dude, thank you so much for being very, very generous with your time. I
Oh
know I
man.
picking people's brains and talking about
No, it's
music.
it's
You know.
it's awesome. Thanks for inviting me to do it, and it's been a blast having the conversation with you.
Well, tell people where they can find the
I
new
will for
EP
sure.
and what else is going on. Where are you playing live coming up in the next few months?
Yeah, so new EP, we've probably easiest place to get to it is Bandcamp. And I think it's just hgwtmusic.bandcamp.com, I think is where our little Bandcamp kind of camp is set up. And we've got it's on gold 10-inch vinyl, as well as we pressed it on CD as well. And you can get it on digital. It's also everywhere that streams music, Spotify, and all that stuff as well. So you can find it there. We are currently, I think we're kind of wrapped up for the year. We have one more thing in St. Petersburg. Day after Christmas, we're playing at a really. I'm not sure when this episode's gonna air or whatever, but we do have one show in St. Pete, a place called the Ale and the Witch. It's a really cool brewery in St. Petersburg. We're playing, and then that's going to be it for the year. And then we're currently kind of working on some stuff for early 2026, but a lot of it's still kind of up in the air. And we do want to try to get out and do a little bit of touring and kind of support the new EP if we can. And so we're looking at kind of probably like springtime 2026 for that. So you can just kind of like follow us on the socials and stuff like that and see where we're coming and where we're going to be.